he wrote the book in 1931, we can see he was commenting on the future. And it could be predictions, or it could be the fact that he saw what was going on around him and commented on where it might be going. We can talk about how he replaced mothers and fathers with technology. We can talk about required drug use. Yes?
But where do babies come from?
What's so bad about LSD?
Is there some sort of problem with recreational sex?
I don't really see why there's any problem with brainwashing or conditioning.
So having separation in class is a good idea though, isn't it? Because my social studies teacher said that apartheid worked.
Yeah, this isn't too different from Hitler's views of genetic purity.
See, getting rid of mothers and fathers and cloning babies seems like a good idea to me.
Yeah!
Class dismissed.
We've all had those moments in class when a lesson goes sideways or someone asks you a question you're just not prepared to answer. And you find yourself thinking, go and ask your parents or ask your friends at lunch. But the way we handle controversy in either a planned or spontaneous conversation in class is crucial. UBC's Dr. Stephen Petrina, in his 2007 work Advanced Teaching Methods for the Technology Classroom, states that teachers who moralize too much forfeit influence at times or even create intentional dissent. Teachers who don't care, waffle, or fence sit appear to be apathetic or flighty.
What a great day to be exploring the subject of academic freedom. Canada Day at Fort George Park. It's a day to celebrate the anniversary of a country that allows its citizens huge rights and freedoms. The freedom to study and read what we want is big when we look at countries that don't have this privilege, like China and much of the Middle East and Africa. We can celebrate all over again and thank our country's founding fathers. Happy Canada Day. For several years, I taught Creation Stories unit in my grade 10 English class. We looked at creation mythologies from the Bible, from the ancient Greeks and Romans and Egyptians, from the Norse gods, and First Nations creation stories and legends, as well as the scientific perspective. I enjoyed this unit and scrupulously attacked it with as little bias and moral positioning as possible. Students were free to discuss the merits and drawbacks of each belief set. I taught this unit in a small village that had a high First Nations population, and giving the students the freedom to investigate other beliefs without their teacher denigrating their own was actually a positive experience for all of us. The question of integrating our own touches or content into our classroom curriculum is explored in Professor Petrina's 2008 work, Academic Freedom for K-12 Teachers. In it, he explores some of the history of teachers implementing curriculum into their own classroom, and the degree to which they could tailor it to their own purposes. Petrina recounts the story of 3 students wearing black armbands to school to protest the Vietnam War, which made me think of my own grade 10 teacher who decided to challenge the administration on a school rule that she found to be ridiculous. She wore bright neon clothing to school to protest the no neon rule, and she did this for 5 days straight. Each day she was sent home without pay. The following week, she wore neon but was not disciplined. The rules were changed. What a great object lesson for the students. It had nothing whatsoever to do with her lesson plan at the time, which, quite frankly, I've forgotten all about. But it had everything to do with teaching civic rights and responsibilities, and the political positions of democracy and even fascism. Professor Petrina presents a series of 1980s court cases with the ironically controversial 1988 Supreme Court decision that school officials may impose reasonable restrictions on the speech of students, teachers, and other members of the school community. In both Canada and the US, this remains still the default position.
The British Columbia Library Association Statement on Intellectual Freedom contains 8 really great statements. The first 2 read, "It is in the interest for libraries and librarians to make available the widest diversity of views and expression, including those which are unorthodox or unpopular with the majority." And number 2, "It would conflict with the public interest for libraries to establish their own political, moral, or aesthetic views as the sole standard for determining what books and other material should be published or circulated." Kelly Salas, in the amusingly titled 2004 How to Teach Controversial Content and Not Get Fired, looks at teachers' worries about teaching controversy, about the difficulties one could face with students, other staff, parents, and admin. And many of them just don't think it's worth it. Salas asks and answers the question, who has control over what we teach in the classroom? The answer is, we do. Salas talks of the importance of obtaining permission from administration and parents ahead of time for controversial content. And a great quote, "Part of the process of deciding whether to use a video or any other material or lesson also involves having an understanding of the school community where you work." Another important factor is previewing materials you're unfamiliar with. In our ETEC 531 discussion forum, several of us shared stories about mistakes we've made in this area. And I'm sure most of us have done this, forgotten a swear word or a bit of sex or violence, and then we wait for the phone call. Professor Petrina focuses on several frameworks and methods of dealing with controversial subjects in the classroom. The most clearly delineated and straightforward approach for me was the 2003 Tips for Teaching Controversial Issues from the Street Law Organization, which contained 13 points for consideration. With a little refining and reorganization and rewording of the original points, as well as in consideration of Salas and Petrina's work and my own experience, I've come up with a new approach. I live in Prince George, and we have a real bear problem here. So a good, memorable slogan is PG Bear. Yes, it's PG Bear. Try to be prepared, establish ground rules, avoid bias, focus on evidence, teach active listening, model respect for all opinions. It's simple, just remember PG Bear!